Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
Hey, Kiernan.
Ryan, I mid-pandemic, I'm always... God, I hope we're mid-pandemic. Who even knows?
Broadway's not coming back till June, so I don't think we're mid yet, technically, right?
To June. No, that would put us close to mid, I think.
So we're approaching mid.
Yeah, we're approaching mid. Well, you know what? At least if June were the date, at least we would know. I wish I had something I could plan against, you know?
Yeah.
And I really am torn on our tagline. Should we be keeping it this seat disinfected, or is it this seat taken? Do we want to have the optimistic tone that we can still be adjacent to people in some contexts?
Yeah, I have not been in a situation yet where being adjacent to people was appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the seat disinfected until the vaccine. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. But you have to put your mask on when you say it, so it sounds like, you know. Exactly.
Ryan,
we're all dentists now, right? We can all understand mumbles.
Absolutely. Ryan, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. I having a good time. You know, we I don't know about you, but I work in politics. So right now it's a bit of a stressful time. With folks don't know this.
Are you on a campaign?
I am. I'm on the hard side and the soft side.
I don't know what that means. I just didn't realize, because usually those campaign jobs don't pay too well. So it's good to know that you're working for the people.
Yeah, if you put 16 of them together, it's not so bad.
Now, Ryan, today is one of our patented travel guide shows.
Yeah, one of the most popular episodes ever was the pre-pandemic look at Nashville that I put together for our fans.
That's right. It's one of the most popular. It's not the most popular. That's still owned by Bhutan.
It's a top tier episode. So when I was in Tennessee for my little break, I figured, why don't we spend some time looking at some of these other places?
What an insight.
Thank you. Well, I'm like, I have a travel podcast. I'm traveling. I could combine these two things.
And so we're going to cover, what are we going to cover?
We're going to talk about Knoxville and a little bit about the Great Smoky Mountains. Now, obviously, the Great Smoky Mountains, one could do a Peru-style 3 to 5 episode series on.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah,
we could go mountain by mountain.
Yeah, trail by trail.
Listen, if the pandemic keeps going, we're going to be reduced to that.
We might. Look, so we'll save that, but. We're going to do Knoxville, what a lot of people think, people are saying is the gateway to the Great Smoky Mountains. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the Great Smoky Mountains. So it's going to be a fun sort of a pandemic city episode with a lot of outdoor stuff. Because you know me, I'm like an outdoorsman.
Absolutely. Well,
did you see the photo of me out there jet skiing in the harbor, New York Harbor?
Yes, I did, and I was surprised. You were in New York Harbor and you were jet skiing.
No, I do that all the time. I just don't usually post photos of it. Can I tell you that my body hurt? My full body hurt the entire week. I can still in my back feel the jet skiing.
Hey, yeah, you sound like a real great outdoorsman.
Well, I just push myself to the limits.
Ryan, if I know anything about these travel destination episodes, it's that we don't have a ton of time to dilly-dally up here on the top. I mean, we could bibble-babble for hours, but I think it's really important that we get to your Knoxville guide, and we're going to talk about the Great Smokies mountain by mountain.
Mountain by mountain, trail by trail, peak by peak. All right, well, I think it's time to take off.
Tell the cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
Whoa, we are in the air now, heading straight down.
Ryan, that's not... we might have new pandemic listeners who are going to think that we always pretend that we're recording in the middle of the air. It's just a segment called Takeoff. We haven't actually taken off anywhere.
Yeah, no, that's true. I am here in Bushwick at my table, and you are in Brookline at your table.
I don't live in Brookline. I live in Somerville.
It's all the same to me.
All right. Well, and so just for a piece of context, did you fly to Tennessee?
Absolutely not. We drove.
No. So you haven't been on a plane since
I haven't publicly been on a plane and since March when I flew back to New York.
Hold on. I heard you say publicly in there. What does that mean?
Have
one you been on some private plane?
No. If only. No. One day we can unpack other things, but for the sake of this episode,
have you been traveling for your campaign work that you mentioned?
You know that I have to. A lot of work in Nevada. So, looking at Knoxville, right? So Knoxville is in East Tennessee. Tennessee is really long, right? When we were in Tennessee, we were in Knoxville, we were in Chattanooga, we were in Nashville.
Did you start the trip in Chattanooga?
No, we started in Knoxville.
So you weren't commencing in Chattanooga?
No, we were not commencing
in Chattanooga.
No, we were not commencing. That you got to save that for the Chattanooga episode.
Oh, there's going to be. Oh my God! Wait. So we are doing like a multi-episode Tennessee series.
We're definitely doing Chattanooga and Lookout Mountain because Chattanooga I'm passionate about. So Knoxville is in East Tennessee. We never made it over to West Tennessee, which is basically like the Memphis metro area and all those towns over there. I've still in my life never been to Memphis, so. Maybe one day I'll complete the Tennessee series with a trip to Memphis, but not this time around.
Okay, I'm excited that you did a deep dive into East Tennessee.
Yeah, so we're in East Tennessee, which is Knoxville is the largest city in East Tennessee, which means it's the third largest city in the entire state. So it's a pretty big place. And if you look at the estimated population of the entire metro area, it's pushing 900,000. So it does feel like a city. It's big enough. It's got that kind of sprawl situation. It is a bigger city than you would imagine, right? Like it's got some city charm and some city vibes to it.
Okay.
So we stayed in South Knoxville, or as the kids call it, SoKno.
Yeah, we do call it that.
Yeah, it's super cool. SoKno is this area south of downtown, but 10 minutes outside by car, that is just full of these incredible parks. And Knoxville has built this park set called the Urban Wilderness.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. So
good branding.
It's very good branding, and all these little parks are connected by trails. But it's about 50 miles of trails over over 1,000 or 1,500 acres. It's quite a large project.
Huge.
Yeah, it's quite a large project. And we stayed near a couple of these parks, but there were two in particular I think that were real prizes. And the first one is the iJam's Nature Center and Quarries. So have you ever quarried? Have you ever been to a quarry? Do you have quarry experience?
No. I have quarantining experience.
Well, this is a little different.
No, I don't know what quarrying is.
So a quarry is obviously...
It's like a rock collection site.
Right. It's a place where men with a bunch of mechanical things...
That seems very sexist.
Sorry. It's a place where folks with a bunch of mechanical...
Now that seems very Tennessee.
With a bunch of equipment and dynamite and all these sorts of things, basically mine marble out of the ground and out of the mountains, right?
Wow.
In Tennessee, marble, especially in East Tennessee, is a very sort of special kind of marble and really prized. So if you're at places like the National Gallery in D.C., the Air and Space Museum, the U.S. Capitol, Grand Central Terminal in New York, all these places have Tennessee marble. They were constructed with Tennessee marble. So these Knoxville quarries actually, sent a lot of their beautiful marble all around the country to some of the great sites that we've talked about. So I thought that was...
How is marble created?
How is it created?
Yeah.
Well, so Knoxville used to be called the Marble City because marble was such a big part of its economy. I don't know how marble is created. I mean, I guess you just polish the heck out of the stone, right?
I have to imagine it's more complicated than that.
Right. Well, you get it. I mean, you first getting it out of these big quarries, and then you polish it. But so what's happened is these quarries were all abandoned. After they were, they ceased to be places where folks productive quarries.
So they've already, they've papered Grand Central in marble. They say, okay, hang up the jackhammers. This quarry is tapped.
Totally. And so for decades, these quarries were empty. They filled with trash. In the 80s, they would find bodies there. I have on the notes here, attention park predators, a couple quarry murders that you could investigate. But the city took them over and turned them into these parts of these beautiful parks. So there's this place called Mead's Quarry, where basically it's a massive quarry that's filled with beautiful, surprisingly clean-looking water. And there are multiple entrances for people to swim, kayak. There are ropes for people to climb and jump off little parts of the quarry. So it's just actually sort of in Knoxville proper, like right in SoKno, where we lived. There is this just massive quarry that people go and swim, and it's quite lovely. You can buy a beer, you can sit. It's not like a beach where there's like nice sand, but you can find a little rocky place to sit. And
yeah, it's probably a lot of rocky places.
It's a quarry.
It's a quarry. So yeah.
So this is one of the cool parks there.
You said you could drink? You can drink publicly there in a park, in the city park?
Yeah, they give you they have a little beer stand up there at the park, and you can pick up anything you want as you head into the quarry.
Could you bring a little marijuana?
I think there might have been some young Tuffians, hooligans, smoking some marijuana near us.
So would you say that they were getting stoned in the quarry?
They were not the first to get stoned in that quarry, let me tell you.
Okay.
But so that's one of them, Mead's Quarry, super cool.
And there are many quarries?
There are many quarries, but this is like the main, this is the one that you would go to. And then as part of this, also sort of this urban wilderness situation.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah,
of course. So does the quarry look like marble? Like, does it look like a shell of marble?
The walls are like the walls of the quarry, and the quarry. I mean, you feel like you're deep inside of around you. It looks like sort of mountainous, but it is like brown, pretty. Maybe that's what natural marble looks like, but the wall is, it looks like there's a lot of stone there that if you wanted to go and start pounding on it, you
polishing
could get,
and pounding.
Yeah. But mostly it's just kids jumping off the walls of the quarry. And again, very tall walls. It is bizarrely pretty that this thing exists sort of like so close to downtown.
All right, cool.
So that's cool. And then the second one I really liked was the iJam's Nature Center. And this has this thing called the River Trail. And so they have a lot of trails in these, in the urban wilderness. Some of them are super bike heavy, like racing bikes and BMX bikes. So you have to be careful on those because they say they're multi-use, but somebody going 45 miles an hour down a trail and you're just sort of walking, looking around, looking at birds.
Right.
Those are not really where you want to be for the walking.
Sure.
But the river trail, it's so cool because it leads you through this little woods and you go kind of down towards the Tennessee River. And when you get to the Tennessee River, they've built like a sort of a boardwalk up against the rock of the river wall. So the river wall's got this Tennessee marble wall. And basically, you're on this cool little boardwalk that sort of borders the water. So it's beautiful. And we went a couple times.
Is it at the level of the water or is it like above the water?
It's a little bit above the water, but it does feel it is because the water is right to your right and to the left is this big Tennessee marble wall. It does feel like it's a lovely little spot. And the times that we went, there weren't that many people there. Because you do have to sort of walk a mile before you get to that section of the river trail. So I would encourage folks to check that out. And iJam's had like a lot of stuff going on. They had outdoor Shakespeare events in the lawn. So it's like, it's a whole community center that's got like educational opportunities for the kids. They've got these trails. So very, very cool. So I would encourage folks to check out the urban wilderness and see some of the many parks that have sort of come in under that umbrella in South Knoxville.
It sounds like a model for city parks. And what I like is that they've made use of like historically relevant industry areas that, fueled the growth of the city and have converted them so that you can appreciate the history, but you can also relax in nature.
And what was cool about it is sort of everybody from the community was there together. It was very diverse, a lot of different ages. You see grandparents, you see kids, a lot of cute dogs running around. So it was a very welcoming, chill environment there at the quarry and at the urban wilderness in general.
Very cool.
So not to stay on South Knoxville too much longer, because that's really the cool thing in SoKno. But I wanted to call out this really good taco place that is, according to our Airbnb host, an institution in Knoxville. And that is the SoKno Taco Cantina. And these folks had it going on in terms of the outdoor social distancing. They had like all these great tables. They had they had music outside. Like they were making use of the outside space that they had because they were in SoKno. So they had like a lot of green space where they could, put out tables and everything. So it was very, very exciting. But the tacos,
I feel compelled just because you're really leaning into SoKno. Just to so everybody knows, the neighborhood name of SoKno is spelled like Knoxville, so it has the K in it. So it's SoKno. Just think that's an important tip for those who want to go and Google it and really dig into SoKno.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah.
It's just important that people don't think that it's, so northern in Knoxville or something like that, and SoNO.
So yeah, the tacos were fantastic. So the only reason I bring that up is because we did not have a lot of good Mexican food. Well, that's not really true. We did not find a lot of good Mexican food. I'm sure there is quite a bit of good Mexican food in these various cities, but SoKno Taco became a place that we were regulars at by the 2.5 weeks that we were there in Knoxville.
Mm-hmm.
So after you've spent some time in SoKno, there are 3 bridges that cross across the Tennessee River into downtown Knoxville. So you're probably going to go through one of the 3 of those. And downtown Knoxville has a couple interesting areas. They've got Market Square and Old City, and both of these areas are like historic parts of Knoxville from its founding. You can see you read lots of plaques about all the sort of random things that have happened in Knoxville, but they're the most sort of walkable areas in the city. A lot of little restaurants, little shops, little galleries, some that were open, some that were not, obviously because of when we were there, but typically there would be a lot going on in those areas. And quite a few restaurants there that we ended up and going down to Old City and Market Square a lot to grab dinner. And then one of the cool things there, and so you're a Simpsons guy, right?
When I was growing up, I was a big Simpsons consumer. I can't say that I've watched it in recent years, but yeah, I know Simpsons pretty well.
So are you familiar with the episode where they find the Knoxville travel brochure?
Oh gosh, no, I'm not.
And it has the Sunsphere, and it says the World's Fair is happening in Knoxville. And of course, they show up, 15 years later.
Yeah.
And there is no World's Fair, and they've converted the World's Fair, this massive Sunsphere, which is in downtown Knoxville, and everywhere you see it from everywhere. It's the Eiffel Tower of Knoxville.
What is it exactly?
It's a really tall copper-colored ball that sort of radiates. When the sun hits it, it gets very, very bright. And they put they've had various failed cocktail bars and restaurants up there. Now it's like office buildings. It's kind of cool in like a really 70s sort of way. The whole park there was sort of out of shape since the 1982 World's Fair. And then in the mid-aughts, the mayor actually did a big renovation of the Sunsphere and the amphitheater and all this stuff and remade that whole area to be really beautiful. So they've got this fantastic open-air amphitheater right down there next to the Sunsphere in this World's Fair park. So it's quite a lovely area. And, while the Sunsphere is really dorky and strange, it's sort of a fun quirk of Knoxville because you can see the Sunsphere pretty much from wherever you are in Knoxville. You can find downtown by finding this gleaming copper ball that sort of hovers above the city.
Well, that actually makes it. Now I understand Knoxville's motto: "Look for the big copper ball."
It is. When I told folks I was going to Knoxville who are Simpsons fans, they were like, "Are you going to see the Sunsphere?"
That's funny.
And I'm like, yeah, I love, you and me, we love World's Fair leftovers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In Queens, very famously, you have the huge globe from the World's Fair. And
that is in Corona Park.
That's correct, Corona Park. And I like going and exploring the old sites that places like invested in and built. And many of them were meant to last for like 2 years. And instead they've been around for decades. They become icons of cities.
You've got to think that some of the cities that tore down their World's Fair stuff really regret it. They're like, why didn't we just leave it up?
Themselves. Absolutely.
Yeah. So check out the Sunsphere. And then another cool thing
Sounds like you will have if you visit Knoxville, you have no choice but to check out the Sunsphere.
I mean, yeah. You will see the Sunsphere no matter where you go. But I think you should walk around that park because it's kind of a cool space. And very close to all that, in the same sort of walkable distance, is the Knoxville Museum of Art. So I haven't been to a museum to see indoor artwork since March of this year, right? Because I can't. I was in March. I went to the Whitney to see the Vita America exhibit, which was fantastic, and then immediately the whole world shut down.
Sure.
So this is my first time going to a museum. Was when I went to visit this Knoxville Museum of Art. They did. You had to reserve online before you went. They limited. It was like 20% capacity in the museum, and it's a pretty big museum. So it was like being in the museum by yourself, essentially, when you were there.
It hadn't really occurred to me, but actually, cutting down. If you're lucky enough to get one of the spots, much better way to view art at 20% capacity.
Yeah, I mean, I want to go to the Met where I can actually be able to see the stuff instead of just being pushed aside like I'm in it gets crowded there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Knoxville Museum of Art, and there was a really interesting exhibit on. So you know that I'm a James Baldwin fan.
Sure.
Love James Baldwin.
Famously.
I mean, I talk about James Baldwin all the time. Beauford Delaney is this artist who was born in Knoxville in 1901. He's a black artist, and he spent his first 22 years of life in Knoxville, working, painting, and finally he decided, look, it's 1922. I'm a gay black man in Knoxville, Tennessee. There are probably better places I could go, right?
Absolutely.
So he ends up moving to Boston for a while, and then New York, and then
Boston
and then
would
Paris.
not have been where I recommended. If you're going to go north, I'd stop at New York.
Yeah, I did. He didn't stay long, He was
like, "Oh, I thought it was bad in Knoxville."
Yeah. So he has become his career has become a major. So he's become a major focus of the Knoxville Museum of Art. They have been collecting his paintings for a while now because he is the most famous artist easily to come out of Knoxville. And so they were having this really fascinating exhibit of his work in connection with his friendship with James Baldwin. So James Baldwin's like a younger man than him, but met Delaney in his teens. When James was in his teens, they met in New York. They became fast friends, and there's a ton of work of Delaney has painted James Baldwin throughout his life. So they had all the portraits, they had all the sketches.
Oh, that's so cool.
They had all this really cool stories about both their lives, how they intersected, how they both moved to Paris, all this stuff. Really amazing. I didn't know almost any of that story. I'd only seen one or two of the paintings before. So how lucky for me to get to kind of return to museums and for there to be such a specific exhibit in Knoxville, Tennessee, of all places. So believe it or not, there is a virtual tour of this exhibit that the museum has put up, and I'll have a link to it in the show notes. I watched some of it before this podcast so I could sort of revisit these stories, and they show a nice gentleman walks you through each of the pieces and talks about them. A little less exciting than being there yourself, but it does count, I think, as a virtual museum experience.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know.
No?
You still went.
Yeah, I went in real life, but then I went back in fake life.
But you can't claim to have had a virtual museum experience just because there is a virtual version of the thing you went to in person.
But I watched a little bit of it in preparation for this conversation.
I'll take it under advisement and let you know later.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, what else do I love, Kiernan? I Well, before you answer, I'll jump in.
Yeah.
I love miniatures. I love miniatures, right?
Oh, that was not. Well, actually, many of the boys that you like do tend to be miniature.
I like miniatures, okay? I'm a big fan of the miniature rooms in Chicago.
The smaller, the better.
Thank you. So they have this massive collection of miniatures at the Art Institute in Chicago.
Really?
Yes. And it's Wes Anderson, before he directs a film, always goes and he walks through the miniature room and he just imagines
in
all
Knoxville?
this. No, stay with me here. In the Institute of Art in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
But look, that's... The reason I brought this up is the Knoxville Museum. The Knoxville Museum actually has the second largest collection of miniatures by the same person who did the ones in Chicago. So they have 9.
Oh wow, that is really narrow.
They have 9.
That's a narrow claim to fame.
They have 9 miniature rooms, right?
So they have the second largest collection of miniatures by the same artist as the Art Institute of Chicago's miniatures.
Right. And look, Thorne is like the American artist known for her depiction of these, for her miniature room. So it's a big deal.
Sorry, her name is Thorne?
Her name is Narcissa Nyblack Thorne.
Okay.
And the Thorne rooms are in the Knoxville Museum of Art, Art Institute of Chicago, and Phoenix Art Museum. So that's where her work is shown. Mm-hmm. I know it really well from the Art Institute of Chicago because every time I go to Chicago, I make a point to spend an hour walking through that extraordinary museum. I like to see, whatever. So I did not know this.
You always make it a point to go to see the miniature rooms.
Yeah. And so I didn't know this when I was in Knoxville. So it was a total surprise for me. And that's a permanent exhibit. So the James Baldwin exhibit, that's going to go away, even though they still have a ton of Beauford's work there. Mm-hmm. But when you go to Knoxville, you will most definitely be able to see these miniature rooms. And if you love miniatures as much as me, that's going to be a big win for you. So,
no, wow. A miniature room is a big win. And now, you didn't know that the museum had it. So you were in the museum, you were browsing, and did you just see like a tiny little door? And you were like, what's in there?
No, well, I saw like a little sign that was like under construction, and then a little sign that said Thorne Miniature Rooms.
How little was the sign?
It should have been smaller. I mean, look, this wasn't like, it wasn't being John Malkovich. It was real life I was in.
Sure.
So it can only be so interesting.
And just describe the rooms a little bit. What's so extraordinary about these miniatures?
There were recreations of classic American drawing rooms. So there's just like rooms of the 30s and 40s, and it's to scale, and they're incredibly detailed. And anyone who's been to the Art Institute of Chicago knows exactly what I'm talking about with these rooms. Mm. And so you get to see a parlor room and a bedroom, and they're exquisitely detailed. So I'm a big fan of miniature rooms. I actually got for my birthday this year a couple miniature items. I got a mid-century modern table. I got some nice chairs. I got a little plant. So I'm going to one day have the Ryan Davis miniature room.
Is that true? You have miniature doll furniture in your house?
It's not doll furniture, okay? It's miniatures. It's not doll furniture.
Ryan, do you collect? Do you have a growing collection of doll furniture? Is that what you're revealing on the podcast today?
It's not a growing collection. It's just I have a few pieces of miniature furniture, classic Danish-made furniture.
Why did you? Because you want to create small dioramas for your home?
No, it was a gift. Because
from whom?
From my boyfriend. Because he knows how much I enjoy miniature rooms. Oh I know, and now I'm on all these mailing lists from this old woman who sells miniatures.
This is shocking. This is a shocking. I mean, after so many years and so many podcasts, I thought I knew everything about you, Ryan, but this is just a whole new world.
You've heard me talk about Gulliver's Gate and all these. I love miniatures.
You do.
Anyway, moving on from the miniatures, and sort of the last thing a couple things I want to say about Knoxville, really just to give shout outs. There was this amazing wine store in Knoxville called Downtown Wine+Spirits, and they kept us in stock with natural wine for the whole time we were there. They were super nice. They warned us there was no natural wine store in Chattanooga, so we could, bring a case with us. So a surprisingly cool, indie, hip wine store, downtown Knoxville. And that was sort of sort of Knoxville in a nutshell. Obviously there's a couple theaters. They always have like live music and stuff. None of that was open, but I would encourage folks to check those out. And those are also downtown. So a lot in that downtown market area to see, especially in non-pandemic times.
Was there any connection in Knoxville to Davy Crockett?
We saw a lot of Davy Crockett stuff on the drive into Knoxville, like signs and stuff. We could go, but we didn't. We did not do any Davy Crockett tourism. And there,
I feel like a Davy Crockett tour of Tennessee would be pretty interesting.
Totally
guiding. That would be like a fun guiding principle to put together or drive around.
Yeah, we went to like in downtown Knoxville. There's a couple sort of original, quote unquote, original forts. But they've all been rebuilt, and they were fine. But they were not anything I would say that if you haven't toured like a rebuilt house from 1800s, then you could do that. But otherwise, it's just not that very exciting. Like James White's fort and stuff, just not great examples of forts, and not particularly interesting. And the city has a lot of history, but Chattanooga actually has like so much Civil War history that we sort of didn't do much. History stuff in Knoxville.
And does Knoxville have like what do their tourist T-shirts say? Like, do they have like the
Sunsphere?
It's all Sunsphere.
The
related.
Sunsphere is their big thing. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah,
it's pretty ugly for what it's worth.
Well, you can think that, but
I do.
I think it has like a unique beauty.
Folks need to understand it's not just a giant sphere. It's actually a building with the sphere all the way at the top.
Yes, and we were joking that there are fancy offices buildings in there, but I'm like, who would think that was fancy? It's like Donald Trump.
Yeah, yeah, right.
He's like, it's a gold on top.
Right. Yeah. No, it looks like an upside down thermometer.
Yeah, it does look like an upside down thermometer.
You're drinking the natural wine. You got to get some food.
Yeah, you got to pick up some food. So one of the places we loved right on Market Square was Oliver Royale, and it's sort of a French-inspired place. But everything's got a little Southern fixins. I mean, basically means fried green tomatoes are on the menu at that point, which is great. Not complaining about that. But we did pick up from there a couple times, and it was really fantastic food, great service. I would love to have eaten inside. When we were in Knoxville, eating inside was a thing, but we did not do it. But everyone else seemed to be having a great time. And it was too hot to eat outside at that point in Knoxville still. It's like 85 degrees out and like humid. So, we didn't do a lot of that. But yeah, pick up from Oliver Royale, beautiful menu. People are really nice. And definitely it's close by to the wine shops. You can just grab a bottle of wine and grab your meal and head back to your little Airbnb.
I mean, this is one of the joys of the pandemic, which is, desirable restaurants, whether you didn't want to put in the time or simply it was hard to get into places. If they're popular, you can often get takeout from them. So that sounds like a good rack.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kiernan, we've just talked about Knoxville and the surrounding area. I want to move now into the Smoky Mountains.
Fantastic. Yeah, we have too much time in the city. It's time to get the sunshine on our faces.
Yeah, so we are here now in the Smoky Mountains.
No, we're not. Again, we're not pretending that we're currently there.
Okay.
So you headed out. So like, is Knoxville? Is it nestled within the Great Smoky Mountains? Or are you driving a short distance?
It's about 45-minute drive to the national park. Yeah, it's not bad. And you drive through Pigeon Forge, and Pigeon Forge is the sort of town that Dolly Parton built as an amusement park town, and it is full of like miniature golf and weird Ripley's Believe It or Nots and all that stuff. We didn't stop, but it's like Ocean City, Maryland.
So
where
like
I grew up.
It's
a family resort town for country families,
but full of like roadside attractions for people on their way to the Great Smoky Mountains.
All the fakest roads, it's like explore King Tut's tomb and like.
Oh my God! Is King Tut's tomb is there?
Yeah, I don't think it's really his tomb. I think it's something out. But and then they have all these like dinner shows and everything. Dolly's Stampede is there. So
is Dollywood near this?
Dollywood is near all this. Yeah,
we didn't go.
No, we're going to go to Dollywood.
Right, but because of the pandemic, though.
Right.
You were smart to skip.
We decided not to go to Dollywood.
Does Pigeon Forge have some good miniatures?
I didn't check.
Ryan,
I don't think.
I think we all know it's not true that you didn't check.
It's not. Look, it's not that kind of a town.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not as sophisticated as your fancy doll furniture that you collect.
It's Danish. So you drive through that Pigeon Forge, and it's like, it's pretty kooky. And then you get to Gatlinburg. Now, Gatlinburg is a town that we entered the Smoky Mountain National Park, the Great Smoky Mountain National Park in. There are obviously many entrances. In fact, there was one close to us when we were in North Carolina on the other side of the mountains. Gatlinburg is another sort of touristy town, but it's way less sort of like amusement park based. There are a couple sort of amusement things you can do. You can climb to the top of this viewing structure to see the mountains really from high up, and you can also take what are those things called when you're skiing? The ski lift.
The ski lift, sure.
Yeah, you can take a ski lift up a mountain, and you can sort of see a bit. But those two things seem pretty touristy, and we were focused on actually hitting the national park and doing a hike and getting up high without having to sit on a seat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So an extraordinary amount of trails and options await you at the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. We're talking about a national park that is 244,000 acres of Tennessee and 276,000 acres of North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of understand Great Smoky Mountains is the most popular national park in the U.S., and it's partially because it's so huge. It's in such close proximity. As you said, it was 45 minutes from Knoxville. It's super accessible from a lot of metropolitan areas.
Exactly, and 2 states. So it's 800 square miles. It's just a huge park. So we decided to do this hike to Rainbow Falls, and the reason we did this is because we like waterfalls, and like a good, like to get some good elevation in a hike, right? Like a hike is not a hike unless you're getting up about 1,500, 2,000 feet at least, in my opinion.
Sure. You have very strict standards for a new outdoorsman.
So we did the Rainbow Falls Trail. And what's really cool about Rainbow Falls is you could actually, it was huge. I mean, it is 80 foot high. So it's very, very tall. And you can actually, there's sort of several separate little clean little pools that lead up to it. And then you can actually get behind it, which is really lovely.
Neat. Yeah.
So it was busy, but it was big enough that people will give you plenty of time to spend, and you didn't feel rushed. And not everybody decided to go up behind the waterfall, so only 10% of people wanted to make that little hike, a little risky, a little slippery.
Sure. Yeah.
But really beautiful. And so we did that hike. It was great. We're able to grab some great pictures and see Rainbow Falls. So if you want to continue past the Rainbow Falls, you can hike up to the top of Mount LeConte, but we were pretty beat and it was pretty hot. So we decided to just kind of spend a little time at the falls and then head back. But you can bring a picnic lunch there if you wanted. I mean, there was space to relax and really enjoy the falls.
That sounds great. How did you choose where to go in the Great Smoky Mountains? Just because you said there's so many different entrances. Did you solely go for the waterfall?
Yeah, so we chose based on the fact that we knew we were going to enter through Gatlinburg.
Okay.
And then I used all trails to see the various trails, and I wanted a trail that was at least 5 miles, because you want to get a good hike in. And that one had the added benefit of having the waterfall, so it was a good pick. I like waterfalls or big elevation views. So those are my 2 things.
All right.
And obviously, again, the Great Smoky Mountains, you could explore it for months and still have only done a percentage of it. It's so massive.
Yeah, I think that's getting lost. That's what you're describing.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Spoken like somebody who has not listened to Park Predators enough.
No, I think everybody's listened to it enough. So another thing we wanted to do while we were in the Smoky Mountains area is to do a really serious cavern.
Yeah. Oh, I love you can go back to Caves 101, a great episode, far under listened to in my opinion. I love caves and caverns.
Yeah, we did 2 caverns while we were on this trip, and we'll talk about both of them. But this one here was Tuckaleechee Caverns in Townsend, Tennessee.
Okay.
And this is nestled in the Smoky Mountains. It's a private site. It's not part of the national park. So you have to pay, I think it was $15 or something for the hour tour, but most definitely worth it. Really incredible a lot of really incredible formations there underground in this sort of like, it's a little over a mile sort of round trip adventure, including this one room that they call the big room, which is it's a football stadium sized room, and they turn off. They get everybody in, and they have these lights on, and then they turn off the lights. And boy,
classic cave trick. Almost every cave tour I've ever done, they do this. They bring you to a room, they shut the lights off. They say, "Can you imagine how dark it is?" And you try to look at your hand, you can't even see your hand.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then she did something, and that was pretty funny. She said that if you rub your hands together really fast, you'll start to see light. And she called it a reaction. Mm-hmm. And a bunch of people did it, and then she said they were dumb.
That is good. That's pretty good.
It was pretty good.
Yeah.
It was pretty good. It was. You also got to see a little waterfall called the Silver Falls. That's underneath the.
Now, Ryan, did you rub your hands together? Sorry, I just wanted to clarify.
I'd rather not say.
Yeah,
I think I did for fun. I did for fun.
Well, you know what you could have done? You could have taken the two miniature chairs that you had in your pockets that you were carrying around just for good luck, and gave them a nice rub to try to start a fire with out of kindling wood. Except to a miniature collector like yourself, that's probably hearsay suggesting that you might use your miniature chairs for kindling.
I mean, the miniature chairs are almost as expensive as real chairs. That's what I think people don't realize about miniatures.
She must have really lost you when she said, "And wait until you see the big room." You were like, "Not interested." What? Do you have any tiny rooms around here?
Oh, funny.
Oh, this is going to be reoccurring, folks. This is coming back every episode.
Well,
we might have to do a best miniatures episode.
I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to do a miniatures episode. I'm going to see some miniatures in Terrytown not too long from now.
Oh my God. Really? You're traveling to Terrytown to see miniatures?
Well, it's not that far. It's like a 20 minute.
It's not next door. I mean, really, this is genuinely a passion point. Ryan, we're definitely doing a miniatures episode.
I'm leading that one.
Yeah, okay. Agreed.
So these caves originally opened in 1931, and then they were closed due to the Depression, and people were just not traveling as much as they were before. And then finally, they were reopened in 1953. So since 1953, folks have been coming to see these caves. And they still have a lot of live growths. If they're still wet, and there's still a lot of places you can't touch because there's still the stalactites and the stalagmites are still growing in the cave.
Sure.
So that's a cool thing. So I would recommend it.
And do they have like a path or a boardwalk or like metal gates?
Yeah,
that you're
it's totally
supposed to walk on?
it feels very secure and safe. I mean, it's been open for a very long time, so they've got their
they figured it out.
They figured it out. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. They even have Wi-Fi down there, which I think is unnecessary.
Hate that. That's not good.
Yeah, you don't need that.
So it's like, look at how dark this room is. And look at all these pictures on Instagram that we put of the big room.
Yeah, the big room is awesome. So, I thought it was good, though, Kiernan, that we went to the Smoky Mountains. We hiked up a mountain and we went below a mountain to really get, the total
the full
view,
experience.
the full experience of those Great Smokies. And you can really tell why they're called the Smoky Mountains, because you really do see that sort of smoke sit on top of it. I mean, that fog that really does look like smoke in the mornings, and it is a beautiful sight to see. So
I didn't realize, is that genuinely why it bears the name Smoky Mountains?
Yeah, it's what our girl Dolly, and Dolly's a big deal down there in East Tennessee. She's the East Tennessee queen. But she sings a lot about those Smoky Mountains and the smoke hanging over, and she uses it as in a literary way.
It's interesting. It's amazing that they ever found Davy Crockett, because he was born on a mountaintop in Tennessee, probably in the midst of all that smoky cloud.
Yeah, he was most definitely. That's why he was always such a powerful guy. I can't think of a good word.
And so, Ryan, do you think that you'll return to the Great Smoky Mountains? Because it seems like you just got a taste.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, I would definitely be returning out to this part of the country. It's beautiful, and there's other parts of the mountains I want to explore, and little towns around. And yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I have your descriptions definitely compelled me, particularly on Knoxville, which was not really on my list of places to hit. Just to wrap up, I'm curious, what made you choose Knoxville as one of your destinations?
Honestly, we needed a place where we could work from.
Yeah.
So we had to work. We looked at places that were more in the mountains, but we made the Airbnb host run a speed test on their internets, and unfortunately, we did not believe we could have 2 full video Zoom sessions going on at the same time. So we picked places that were close enough that we could have the hiking and the cycling and the mountain experience, but still have access to really, really fast internet. And Knoxville has good internet. So
the speed test, that's a brilliant idea for needing to choose Airbnbs. Because I think, we're trying to be really mindful of you and I. We both took these trips. I went to Maine, you went down to Tennessee, and we were trying to play it pretty safe in the pandemic and respect rules. And it's true that many of us are trying to take advantage of the fact that remote work is now the normal. So even if you're planting in a place, you've got to check the internet before you go there. I've got 2 friends, they're road tripping all around the West. They plant in a city during the week, they work all week out of an Airbnb, and then they go out and they hit national parks on the weekends.
I love that. We should have them on the pod sometime.
They would like that too much. We put in the work. But
let me tell you, if an Airbnb host says, "Oh, I don't know how to do a speed test," their internet is not good enough. I promise, it's not good enough.
Another good tip. Well, Ryan, I think that was a tremendous wrap up of Knoxville and the Great Smoky Mountains. I look forward to in a few weeks we're going to be covering Chattanooga.
Yeah, I am super excited because let me tell you, Chattanooga was the surprise of the trip.
Oh, that's a great teaser. I think we got to leave it there.
Yeah, we got to leave it there.
Well, Ryan, with that, I think it's time for the last stop.
The last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
All right, Ryan. Well, we're here in the last stop. This is the final segment of the show. That's why we call it the last stop, the last final, sort of the same word. And this is where we each take a moment. It's a space. It's a non-judgmental space. It's a place to find peace and meditation. And it's something we could all use here in the middle of the pandemic, where you and I. I should also mention it's my favorite segment. It's your favorite segment. It's popularly known as the People segment. And it's where you and I each share one thing, just one thing. For the full show, we bring in lots and lots of things. This, we narrow it down to just one thing. It could be something we read, something we watched, maybe something we cooked, maybe a piece of gear. It could be something somebody said to us. It could be anything that fed the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week. And folks, it doesn't get much more workaday than the week these days. So Ryan, I have to ask you, as I ask you every week, did you bring a last stop this week?
So Kiernan, I've been spending a lot of time like yourself in national parks. And one of the things about the Great Smoky Mountain National Park is there are bears there. And I don't mean bears like overweight, hairy gay men. I mean the animals, the bears.
Sure. Yeah, I actually understood what you meant.
And so
first time around.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well that's good. Yeah. That's good.
We're different types.
Yeah. So it was convenient that while I was doing all this in early August, the National Park Service found time in their busy schedule to release a social media post that advised folks what to do in the event of a bear attack. And they had to point out to folks at the very top of this post, please do not run from the bears or push your slower friends down. In attempts of saving yourself.
Well, no, I mean, if it's a slower friend, you don't want to push them down. You want to have a slow person who you don't like very much.
Well, it does say that. It says, we apologize to any friends who were brought on this hike as bait.
Fantastic.
Very weird the National Park Service finds this to be funny. But,
sure. Well, what's a mauling or two? I mean, if you're the National Park Service, that's just another day at the office.
They recommend using your voice to be like, make noise to let the animal know that you are human and not prey.
Have you not spent much time in areas with bears?
Yeah, the bears that I spent time with are behind fencing or something that says to them like, hey, I'm on this side, you're on this side.
Sure. Yeah,
and that's the way the cookie crumbles.
Well, so this is very familiar to me. I've been to a lot of national parks that have bears. I've seen bears out in the wild at Denali. I saw a bear last year when I was at Olympic National Park in the Pacific Northwest. And by the way, episodes on all of these. And the national park system usually offers like a training session. Like you can actually go up and learn from a ranger all the rules around bears. And many, many, many require you, or at least they say they require you. They don't check, but you're meant to have bear spray with you just in case.
And what is bear spray made out of? Is it made out of like lion smell, or what is the bear not like?
So it's like it's a chemical spray that is like a peppery kind of like it just as like pepper spray in our eyes would.
So it's sort of like what the police would use against peaceful protesters in the United States.
Just if the president needs to get across a square to go hold a Bible in front of a historic
Gotcha.
church. Yeah,
so bear spray is used against civilians. We use it against bears.
But what's very funny is that I went to one of these that was held by the National Park Service in Anchorage, Alaska, and a bunch of tourists who were all getting ready to head out into the national parks all across Alaska. And they teach you about bear spray. And this woman raised her hand and she said, "Now I'm confused because I thought it was like bug spray where, if I spray it on, it deters the insects from coming onto me." And when I tell you the rangers were horrified, and thank God this woman had come to this, because if you spray it on you, it's a horrible irritant. Like if it gets in human eyes, and it's horrible. And so this woman was all ready to spray herself up and down with bear spray. Also, it's pretty expensive. Like a good can of bear spray is like $40.
Apparently, bears don't like the scent of pine. So maybe if you just took pine sol and just rubbed that all over you, you would really push the bears away.
Now, how could a bear not like the scent of pine? Why do they choose to live in all these places?
I don't know. It does seem like if you hated pine, you would not live in a forest.
Right. Yeah. Go down to Florida or something.
This website I just Googled that on is pestpointers.com. So I don't know that it's
so sure.
Yeah. It says only use pine oil, as other oils like lemon oil might attract the bear. So I would say stay away from this website. That sounds like fake news.
I mean, we'll still link to it, but
I almost hate to ask you, but do you have a last stop this week?
I do have a last stop this week, Ryan. So I mentioned my two friends, this couple who they're taking advantage of remote work and they're traveling all around the West. They've been doing this road trip for they're already 4 months in, I think, and they're doing it all the way through New Year's at least. And they're often in touch with me asking for recommendations on national parks out West. And they've not been to many of them. So I said, obviously Zion in Utah is like a major one to go to. And I said, particularly if you can get the permits to go hike the Narrows. And the Narrows is a famous long hike that you do in what's called a slot canyon, which is a very, very narrow canyon that has...
I love slot canyons. There's a couple of them in Chattanooga.
Whoa, right. I mean, leave something for the episode.
True.
And what's super exciting and interesting about the Narrows is that you are hiking through a river. So you actually have to rent these specialized river boots, and you're walking on, it almost feels like slippery bowling balls. That's like what the bottom of the river feels like. And so you have to have a walking stick, and it's very active and athletic, and it's like no other hike you'll ever do. And you have to get a special permit to do the full hike in the Narrows. And they gave me a call from the road this week just to check in and say hello. And they reported they were not able to do the Narrows at Zion. And I was so disappointed. And I said, why? And as it turns out, some bad news from Zion. They have a bacteria bloom in many of the major river systems that run through Zion. So I've got the announcement right here from the National Park website. They found what's called Cyanobacteria in the North Fork of the Virgin River, North Creek, and Laverkin Creek. Colonies of this bacteria can be red, yellow, tan, green, brown, or black in color. They've got some really noxious, disgusting pictures of it. It forms this like bulbous mass on the rocks. And some of these bacteria produce toxins particularly this toxin, anatoxin A, which can hit and mess with the nervous system in pets and humans. And so, sadly, they have to cut off and shut down any access to any of these beautiful areas. And this is one of those times where you have to just kind of take a deep breath and say, I guess it's a reason to go back. I mean, thank goodness these folks are road tripping all sorts of different places around the West. But I really, really hope that Zion can get this bacteria bloom under control and reopen the Narrows for people, because it's just one of the most atmospheric and most interesting national park hikes out there.
I mean, I think they're very lucky they weren't the ones who discovered this. They're like, what's this strange bacteria in my hands?
Right,
and then they're in an ICU, and it's like they're in that movie Outbreak all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I have to say, Cyanobacteria blooms was not one of the things that I've been worrying about, but I'll add it to the ever-growing list.
Yeah.
And, I struggled with whether to bring this for the last stop, because usually the last stop is a very upbeat and optimistic point in the show. I think it's
not always. I think I did one about like slavery on plantations last week, right?
Gonna cut that. And
I just mean it's not always optimistic.
Well, it seems to me, Ryan, that the pandemic has so messed with our mental health. We're think about today. We're talking about frickin' bear attacks and bacteria toxins. So I think next week we've got or when we put out a new episode in 2 weeks. Remember, we're on the bi-weekly schedule through the end of the pandemic. We've got to resolve, let's both bring a good, optimistic, non-bear mauling, non-nervous system toxin last stop.
Okay, like a non-nervous system toxin last stop.
It's going to be hard. Right.
I had a whole list of last stops that were about different kind of toxins. So is it just nervous system?
You're going to have to go in search for something else to feed that wanderlust.
All right. Hey, Kiernan. What are we talking about next episode?
Well, Ryan, you know what time of year it is, right?
Is it Halloween?
We're close to Halloween, but even more interesting than Halloween is this wonderful Mexican holiday. In fact, I know that you know quite a bit about it. It's called Dia de los Muertos.
Muy bien, the Day of the Dead.
The Day of the Dead. I think many people around the world were introduced to this. For those that aren't as familiar with Mexican culture, through Pixar's Coco.
Well, okay. So maybe children were introduced to it through Pixar's Coco. Cool people introduced to it in the James Bond film that took place in the Day of the Dead. So actually, Mexico City invented a Day of the Dead parade for the filming of James Bond's the Spectre, right?
Oh, really?
There's this,
I didn't know
this
that.
enormous.
I've never seen that.
And they kept doing the parade since then because it was such a hit. But basically, this massive parade, and they filmed this incredible opening where he's running through trying to find people, trying to find the bad guy. But of course, everybody's dressed in their Day of the Dead,
and they've got the face paint.
Exactly.
That sounds great.
Oh, very exciting.
I'm definitely going to review that scene before our next episode, because we're going to talk all about Dia de los Muertos, some of the traditions. You've been to Mexico during Day of the Dead, and I remember you talked about it a little bit, but I realized we didn't do as deep a dive as we should have. So we're going to celebrate this special spooky time of year with a really cool holiday. And I will tell you, Ren, I even hung up some of the paper flags, the papel picado, in my own home. So maybe I'll throw that up on the Instagram as a little bit of a teaser for our Day of the Dead episode.
Yeah, it's a little bit of appropriation, but yeah, no problem.
We're all Catholics. It all comes from Catholic traditions.
It's true. That's
absolutely.
True.
Actually, it all comes from the indigenous. It was prior to the Catholic traditions, for what it's worth. But it picked up on All Saints and All Souls Day. But you know what? We're getting into the meat of the episode. Next episode, we're talking Day of the Dead. Oh, and Ryan, I should mention, because of the every other week schedule that we're doing, the next episode after this one would usually come out on November 3rd. But because Day of the Dead happens just before that, we're going to drop this episode specially on Halloween on October 31st, so that folks can learn about Day of the Dead on the Day of the Dead.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Until then, Kiernan, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, your bi-weekly travel experience.
Just for the sake of the pandemic, we're gonna go. Yeah. We're gonna go back to weekly. Oh, this seat taken.
All right, Kiernan, now you're going to do all that research in the Day of the Dead, and I'm going to watch James Bond and Coco.
Right. Well, you have the lived experience, but yeah, you go watch Coco, Ryan. I'll go do all the research.